Morning, beloved. We have a lot of territory to cover today, so fasten your seatbelts. Today I'll need to condense the story even more than I have been so that we can bring it to a close. So after Team Esther has completed their 3-day fast, Esther literally takes her life in her hands and appears before Xerxes unbidden. The text indicates in a rather understated way that God brings about an incredible miracle. Remember, she has not been called for in 30 days. King Xerxes lowers his scepter to her. He shows her favor and also indicates that he will grant whatever wish she expresses. Now, in what seems to me to be quite a developed strategic mind, Esther asks King Xerxes and Haman to a banquet that day. You know that old saying, the way to a man's heart is through his stomach? Must be true. After this banquet, so they have this banquet together, the king asks again, "What can I do for you? Up to half my kingdom I will grant you." And again, in an amazing display of restraint, Esther invites King Xerxes and Haman to another banquet on the following day, building the suspense and the tension. This woman could teach for CIA or FBI techniques. Meanwhile, Haman has become impatient with how far away the execution of his plan will be, and he begins to cook up another scheme to deal with Mordecai more expeditiously. He calls his family and friends together, and after boasting to them about his limitless preeminence, he exposes his idea to them of how to eliminate Mordecai sooner than later. He's going to build a gallows upon which he will hang Mordecai the next day. Seemingly innocuous occurrence number 500,000 billion, plot twist, Esther chapter 6, verse 1. That night, the king could not sleep. That night, the night between the first banquet hosted by Esther and the second to be held the next day, the king could not sleep. So he ordered the book of the Chronicles, the record of his reign, to be brought in and read to him. It was found recorded there that Mordecai had exposed the plot of the 2 king's officers who'd conspired to assassinate King Xerxes. King Xerxes thinks to himself, "What honor and recognition has Mordecai received for this?" the king asked. Now remember, Xerxes does not know at this point that the Jewish people are the ones being targeted by Haman. He does not know that he has conspired with his advisor to be complicit in the death of his own wife and her people. He does not know that Mordecai is her relative. Now, this is where the artistry of the writer of Esther demonstrates his or her brilliance, in my opinion. The story has been slowly building and is now going to rush along to a dramatic turning of the tables in an impossibly orchestrated series of events. God is working. Back to the text. So later that morning, the king inquires, who's out in the court? Who's just hanging around out there? Guess who just happens to be the first one to arrive? Yes, Haman. Esther chapter 6, verse 6. What should be done for the man the king delights to honor? King Xerxes asks Haman. Now Haman, not knowing what has been going on behind the scenes, presumes to know that this is all for him because he's so amazing after all. Just a side note to all of us, we often don't know what's going on behind the scenes. Talk about the mother of all plot twists. Haman is about to get the biggest letdown of his life and experience the first indicator of the massive shift God has orchestrated in the fortunes of his people. Haman suggests all these ideas of honor that he's been fantasizing about, and in one sentence, reality bites hard. Esther chapter 6, verse 10. Xerxes commands Haman, "Go at once and do all that you have suggested for Mordecai, the Jew." Haman has to lead the noble steed, that is the noble horse upon which Xerxes rides, throughout the citadel of Susa, with Mordecai riding on its back, encouraging all the people to show grandiose displays of honor to Mordecai, his enemy. When he's done with this task, Haman rushes home to his family, and after recounting everything that has happened overnight, even his family prophesies that he'll not be able to vanquish the Hebrews. And as if right on cue, the king's servants arrive to take Haman to Esther's second banquet. After Xerxes and Haman have arrived to their second banquet in an amazingly eloquent, somewhat sarcastic, and restrained monologue, Esther lays out her request for the lives of the Hebrew people. Esther chapter 7, verses 3 through 5. If I have found favor in your sight, please grant my life and spare my people, for we have been sold to be killed and annihilated. If we had merely been sold as slaves, I would have kept quiet, because no such distress would justify disturbing the king, for our affliction is not to be compared to the losses to the king. Talk about subtle sarcasm. And then, when Xerxes asks, "Who is he and where is he who has dared to do this?" she answers so eloquently, "An adversary and enemy, this vile Haman." Xerxes, in a fit of rage, departs for the garden to see if he can figure out a way to solve the problem, only to return at the strategic moment when Haman falls on Esther's couch in intense supplication. Haman's fate is sealed, and the platform that Haman had erected to impale Mordecai on later in the day becomes his place of execution. What a whiplash quick twist of fate. Now, to solve the problem, Xerxes' law cannot be rescinded. It is the law of the Medes and the Persians that cannot be revoked. Esther has waited to reveal that she is related to Mordecai, who steps in and assists the king in making another decree that will not only protect the people of Israel from certain destruction, but will actually raise their standing over the entire empire. On the same date that the die was cast, that it decided when Haman's wicked plan was set to be enforced, the children of Israel are able to arm themselves and fight back against those who would want to destroy them. I think it is interesting to note here that the text includes the following phrase after every encounter where the enemies of Israel attempt to attack them. It says the Hebrews emerge victorious, but they do not lay their hands on the plunder. This is not about financial gain for the Jewish people. This is about survival from certain extinction. And every year, Jewish people everywhere celebrate Purim, Purim, to commemorate God's faithful work behind the scenes on their behalf. Proverbs 16:33 says, "The lot, the pur, is cast into the lap, but its every decision is from the Lord." Dear ones, let me close our Bible study for this week by reminding us, God is always working in all of life's plot twists, the random ones, the ones that don't make sense, to preserve you, his child, as an individual, because he loves you and has a wonderful plan for you, and as you live in a community with his other children, his church, his body, the ones for whom he died. I love y'all. Thank you for joining me this week. Bye.